What is it that we do? What we do is offer working capital solutions in the order to cash and procure to pay cycles of any operating business, right? And we offer these solutions across 98 presence markets plus another 30 non-presence markets. So typically our clients are Fortune 500 global multinationals, public sector entities, even financial institutions and central banks in a lot of cases. By working capital, what do we mean? We provide solutions on their receivables as well as on the payables. And in between, where they have excess liquidity, we provide solutions for appropriate investment of their liquidity. On the trade side, we also offer accounts receivable, supplier finance, and those kind of working capital solutions, which essentially become or fuel the growth for a lot of our clients.
Thank you. How about you?
So first of all, I'd like to thank GetGlobal to invite myself and UPS. It's an honor to be here. So my name is Gunnar Adalbert. I got a new exciting job, and I'm very happy about it. I'm the newly appointed Director of Business Development for UPS at the Expo 2020. I am originally from Sweden, but I've spent a large part of my life outside the country of Sweden. I travel around the world, lived in various countries. And before I got this new exciting appointment, I headed up the e-commerce competence in Europe, and I've had the opportunity to meet all of the large retailing companies around the world, discussing e-commerce and how we can help them to grow e-commerce faster. So that has sort of been my core competence in the last couple of years. Now myself and my family will look forward to relocate to Dubai and participate on the wonderful journey of Dubai Expo 2020.
Fantastic. And it's warmer here than
Yeah.
Sweden. That's a plus, right?
Yeah, you know, I mentioned I'm from Stockholm, Sweden, and the other day my wife sent me some pictures and it's snowing. So right now it's snowing, it's -degree. I told her we're about plus 30 degrees here. So she's a little bit jealous, and I told her, you know, you got to wait a little bit, but pretty soon she's going to come over here as well.
Excellent. So, so I want to dive in a little bit to something that both of you touch in what you do. You very directly, but also Jags in terms of infrastructure and settlements and things like that is something very germane to what you enable. Tell me a little bit about the global landscape for e-commerce. I think when we think about that, we think of Amazon, Alibaba, you know, mom and pop shops putting their stores online, using Shopify perhaps. But help us broaden that a little bit and paint the picture from where it's come and where it's going.
Okay. So maybe I start. So we all, just one example here, we're all wearing a tie, right? 20 years ago, the only place you could buy a tie was in a physical store. Fast forward to today, you can buy a tie online, right? As a matter of fact, we think around 90% of all the commerce is bought in a physical retail store, and about 10% of all of the ties or sales are being done online. So it's still the majority of the commerce is done in physical stores, the minority is done online. However, here's what's important, I think. The 90% has a growth rate around 5%. The 10% has a growth rate of 20%. And that is the reason you see many traditional retailers, companies that sell products in a physical store, they're saying, you know what, I'm growing at 5%. I'd like to grow faster. How do I grow faster? And what they've all realized that if they can start successfully sell their products online, they can grow much faster, like 20%, which is a significant growth opportunities for them. And as a matter of fact, the The fastest growing segment right now is what's the cross-border e-commerce. Cross-border e-commerce, meaning online shoppers like you and me, when we buy products from a company outside of the home market where we live. That segment is growing around 30%. And that is the primary reason why many companies who started selling products in a physical store, then they started to sell it online in the home market because they want to grow at 20%, not 5%. Now they're saying, I want to grow at 30%. And the way they do that is to sell the same products in a neighboring country or in another country. So that is the fastest growing segment right now, is the cross-border. And if we take a look at the geography around the world, I think we all know that e-commerce started in North America, in United States. So they have the best learning curve there. But subsequently, the growth rate is the lowest because of the market maturity there. Asia and Middle East to some degree, e-commerce came a little bit later, so it's less mature. But because of that, you see higher growth rates in Asia and in the Middle East. And Europe is kind of in between North America and in Asia. And you know, you were talking about China, right? China is by far China has actually surpassed United States as the largest e-commerce market today. And I don't know if any of you follow the Singles Day they had in China. Anybody following that? Some of you follow that? Maybe the rest of you.
Massive.
Maybe the rest of you are not single, so you don't follow it. But you know, in one day, and which, by the way, it's the November 11th, so it's 1111. They sold $25 billion worth of sales in one day. And I'm from the country Sweden. We're now in UAE. If you add up the yearly sales for UAE and Sweden combined, it's less than what China sold in one day on Singles Day. So China is by far the largest e-commerce market, followed by United States. And those two countries, they combine over 2/3 of the global e-commerce. If you go to Europe, the largest markets there is UK, it's Germany, it's France. If you go to Asia, it's obviously China, but it's also South Korea, it's Japan, and it's Australia. And in the Middle East, and some of the subcontinents, India is the largest e-commerce market, followed by UAE and Saudi Arabia.
Tremendous growth. So there's how these products get delivered, and then there's also, you know, I mean, one of our early, you know, taglines for GetGlobal was how the world works. We had a very confident beginning, and you know, it's just fascinating to me how e-commerce is facilitated, how it actually works, how it operates. UPS is integral to that, and you must see amazing data from that. And then the other side, of course, is how do you pay for this stuff? You know, we've had lots of conversations at our main event in Los Angeles about, you know, how do you go ahead and do this? There's localization issues, there's all kinds of linguistic things, websites and so on, getting on the right social networks to promote it, advertising and so on, but a lot of it also comes down to how am I going to get paid? So Jags, tell me, how do they get paid? And how do you see this amazing growth of global infrastructure for processing payments, and how companies use you know, your platform and how the industry is developing to accommodate a lot of these things? You know, we see, of course, in the United States, it's not surprising that it works fairly seamlessly, but getting into, you know, the hinterlands of certain, you know, large areas or developing markets and so on, you know, it's fascinating material. Tell us.
Yeah, last week we were talking to one of the major e-commerce providers, this part of the world, and they made a couple of interesting observations. One is exactly to your point, less than 5% of any corporate sales currently is done online, right? About 90-95% is through the traditional channels, and maybe that is where the opportunity is for each of these companies to grow from that 5% upwards. The second thing they mentioned is e-commerce in this part of the world is roughly about $10–15 billion annually in terms of flows, but they expect that to grow to almost $60–70 billion in the next 5 years. So that is the explosive growth that this industry is going to witness. But very, very quickly they added today that more than 60% of e-commerce is still cash on delivery. So going back to your point, how do people purchase online? That is today, it's still cash on delivery. Could be for a variety of reasons, right? Some of the markets that you mentioned, China, India, why they have seen this kind of rapid growth and e-commerce adoption is the recent, digitization. Almost everybody has one smartphone, or if not more than one. Availability of data, connectivity. This is what has created that e-commerce momentum, and closely associated with that is the financial product. Right? Everybody now has a credit card or a debit card which they can use online and make that purchases. That could be one of the reasons why here online commerce is still cash on delivery predominantly. The other reason could be the perceived challenges around fulfillment, right? Whether what I have shopped and bought online is exactly what I am getting, right? So they want to be able to see that and then pay for it. And therein lies the challenges for fulfillment organizations like the UPS. You have to make 3 or 4 attempts to deliver the goods to the end consumer. But what we have seen from our client base now is what was used to be historically traditionally a B2B kind of a commerce. Increasingly, our clients are moving towards B2B or B2C. They want to be able to sell directly to end consumers, and that is where banks like Citi play an important role. These are the Fortune 500 kind of companies who are already integrated with various cities' platforms and solutions, and what we have been doing is making investments in our platform so that they're able to both deliver their promise on e-commerce, but at the same time we are able to provide that fulfillment engine. How is that enabled? In quite a few markets in the Middle East, we have seen central banks take a lead. We are seeing the introduction of e-Fawatir, which is an online payment mechanism in both Jordan and in Egypt. Bahrain recently introduced something called near real time, right? So a person can make a payment to another entity or a beneficiary, and the other entity can see that credit in their account within 15 seconds. And this is not some Alipay or Paytm in India. These are not, this is the central bank introducing such payment schemes. Very soon in the UAE, we'll have an online payment gateway which will facilitate this kind of commerce even more. Our clients will be able to put up their products and services online, and they will be able to receive online payments from every bank account in the UAE, and that is the promise, and that is where banks like Citi are investing heavily, both in building these capabilities, also engaging with our clients and showing them what is possible.
So about what's possible, I'm interested because when you look at Alibaba, for instance, they have a lot of stories about how they were able to start getting people to trust them. Similar sorts of things happen in the early days of e-commerce in the United States. Am I getting the right thing? How do I trust this? Or buying in a foreign country on a website in a language you don't understand, you translate in Google, you don't trust that. So there's a lot of trust issues, right? What are you seeing in terms of building trust and getting over that barrier to the purchase, which of course is one of the reasons why we're still dealing with cash on delivery stuff?
So for banks, trust is we look at it from a different angle, right? One is trust on the product or the service that is being delivered online. But for financial institutions and banks like us, it is around 2 aspects. One is how do we keep the funds secure till the actual transaction is complete. So we have mechanisms like the escrow structure that we can put in place, and we hold custody of an end consumer's funds till the actual delivery has been completed. And this is a solution that we have offered in various countries. And in some countries like India, it is a regulatory mandatory need that banks hold custody of the funds up to 14 days after the goods are delivered, and only then release the payment to the merchant, right? And the reason for that is the consumer might receive the product, and there is a return policy that the online commerce also has to fulfill, right? If the consumer is not happy and he wants to return those goods in 5 to 7 days time, then he should not be dependent on the merchant to receive the refund on that. That is where banks like us hold the custody of those funds and make sure that the return policy is executed. On cross-border commerce, which you highlighted, as you get into some of the regulated countries, right, most of the GCC is fairly straightforward and clear. But as you get into Egypt, or as you get into Pakistan, Morocco, North Africa, Turkey even, right, when you're selling goods and services cross-border, that you are not physically present as an entity within a country, but you're required to, the payment fulfillment happens from residents in these markets, and there are a lot of regulations governing, the payment, cross-border payments, right? That is where banks like us play a role, where we make sure that the transaction is authentic, right? The second level of trust that we provide is around cybersecurity, right? The solutions that we offer need to be foolproof and secure, so that the credentials the end consumer puts online are safe, right? This is the two level of trust that financial institutions like Citi make sure happen, so that clients can confidently go and provide their services online.
Can I just add one point to that?
Sure, sure.
Because we actually have something in common, and that is, in my experience, most retailers that sell products online, their core competence is their own products, and they are so good in displaying the products that they sell online. You can zoom in, zoom out, colors, sizes, stock. It's fantastic. But do you know where most retailers fall short? Is where you come to the checkout process, because that is not their core competence. And there are two components of the checkout process that is critical, and in my assessment, there's not enough attention to that, and that is the payment and it's the logistics. You know, how is this good going to be paid, and how and when will it be delivered? So whenever I'm in front of large retailers, you know, I always praise them about their web shop. It's fantastic, except when I come to the checkout process, right? And then I say, where do you think the sale is happening? It's probably in the checkout process, right? Because that's where the online shopper decides whether they're going to give their credit card or the other method of payment, and how and when they will deliver the goods. And if that checkout process is not good enough, is not convenient enough for the consumer, it doesn't have enough choices, that results in cart abandonment rate. And most companies who don't pay enough attention to the checkout process, they have high cart abandonments because they forget the importance of payment and logistics.
So there is, how do I pay for it, and then how does it get there?
Yeah.
You know, what are some of the interesting things that you're seeing in terms of growth areas globally, and areas where not only maybe incomes are rising, but just the quality of delivery makes it possible to access those areas more easily?
Right. So what we do, UPS, we are a logistics company, and our customers are the retailers, right? But in order for us to provide the best-in-class solutions to our retailers, we want to understand the retailer's customer, the online shopper. So we do a significant amount of research. We don't do it ourselves because it's not our core competence. We outsource that. And we outsource a lot of research, and we're just releasing a piece of research in a couple of weeks. And it's a global pulse of the online shoppers, where we ask 20,000 online shoppers around the world, in North America, in Europe, and in Asia, of what is the state of e-commerce and what are some of the trends, right? And I'm going to get to the point here. And I'd like to share with you some of the trends from the online shopper's perspective. And again, this is based now on a representative sample. It's statistical significance, so if we were to do this over and over again, we would get the same results. Trend number one is the rise of the mobile, right? If we go back when e-commerce started, most of the online sales was done probably on a laptop or desktop, right? Today, close to 50% of all the sales is being done with a mobile phone. So the mobile is definitely rising, becoming more important, and merchants must understand that their consumers are now using the smartphone. The second trend is that consumers are buying products outside of their home markets. In the past, somebody who's a citizen of UAE probably buy only products from the UAE. Today, that same person from UAE is likely to buy from a company in China, Saudi Arabia, or United States. So we see a trend that the world is becoming smaller. Online shoppers are buying products from basically around the world. The savvy ones are buying it from around the world. It doesn't matter. They just want that specific product. And the third trend we're seeing is sort of the concept of virtual reality. Online shoppers would like to understand how the product they're buying would fit their home, fit themselves. So you see a lot of new technology innovations in terms of virtual reality, and online shoppers really like that. They like it to be convenient. So those are some of the trends that we're seeing from online shoppers. In terms of what are some of the trends among the retailers, definitely what we're seeing is more and more retailers are offering more choice and convenience. Online shoppers, they don't like it when the retailer dictates to them how they're going to pay and when they'll be delivered. They like to give the consumer the choice and the convenience, whatever the online shopper wants. So many retailers are responding to that. And then finally, a big issue in e-commerce right now is the concept of returns, right? Oh, yeah. And, I think, by the way, how many in this room have bought something online in your lifetime? Hold your hand up. Okay. How many of you have bought something in the last 3 months? How many of you have bought something online in the last 3 months using a mobile phone? Okay. How many of you bought something online in the last 3 months on my phone from China? There's the savvy shopper. You're the winner. But so when I say returns, you know what I mean about returns. Returns is very challenging for most retailers, because on the one hand, you want to have flexible returns policy that meet the needs of the consumer. On the other hand, you don't want to go broke, right? So you got to find that right balance on the returns, but it's very important that a retailer has a very good returns policy on their web shops, and you see a lot of retailers now trying to come up with better returns policy. So that's some of the trends that we are seeing. Obviously, all of this is being enabled by technology. Right. There's a lot of new technology innovation. You see chatbots when you buy something online, chatbots. We actually had a question in our research about whether the online shopper would mind dealing with a robot when they purchase something. And what was interesting is that almost 50% of the online shoppers around the world were almost positive to the concept of dealing with a robot and doing that, as long as they get the correct information.
We had the most fascinating conversation about this at GetGlobal last month, and on the topic of robots. So we had the former ambassador to Japanese ambassador to the UN and WTO and several other intergovernmental organizations, and someone from our board of trustees, major figure in the US-Japan space, and was a former CEO of Airbus Japan. So we're talking about the elections of Japan and everything like that, but toward the end, we were just tremendously curious about what is it with Japan and robots? And it seems to be, this something where they're willing to suspend their disbelief a lot faster than Americans do or a lot of other cultures do to be able to relate emotionally to robots. But what he said was that he made that point, but then he also said that he sees it in America too, that more and more we're able to relate to robots and talk to robots. We have movies like the new Blade Runner movie where you clearly sympathize with the main character about carrying on a relationship with a robot. So it seems to be something that's on the rise, and I think that this is something we should keep exploring about how cultures, relate to artificial intelligence, and not just, humanoid, but pets on your watch or things like that. It's just amazing. So, going back to the technology that enables it all, how fast is all of this being adopted? So, we look at Europe, we look at the United States, we look at a lot of places like that, Japan obviously, but then we start looking at the really rapid growth areas of the world where it's just the most exciting opportunities. Still a lot of cash on delivery, but what's the arc of history bending toward as far as that is concerned? Like, what are we seeing in Africa or in India, Latin America perhaps? Is this something that's catching on amazingly fast or not quite as fast as we thought, or something in between?
We have one client who is banking with us in 30 markets, right? And they took almost 15 years to reach those many markets with Citi. Then 10 years back, we had another client who is now working with us in 50 markets, and they took only 3 years. Right now, you can see the speed, how it is changing. And last year, 2 years back, we onboarded a client who is banking with us in 80 markets in 18 months. So that's the pace at which these companies are expanding. A lot of companies who are born digital, day one, right? They want to be able to sell their products and services to 100 plus markets on day one, and they need to be able to do that. They need strong partners who are able to guide them properly in terms of regulations, tax, account structure, fulfillment, and they will need strong partners like UPS and from a financial services perspective, a bank like Citi, who are already present in these 90 plus markets, and with one single integration at their head office and one switch of a button, they have access to all these 100 markets, ability to receive as well as make payments in these many countries. You might have easily guessed who this 24-month-old company is who's banking with us in 80 plus markets. And it's no longer ability to access markets, it's also a valuation game for many of these companies, right? Their own ability to build up customer base and therefore improve their valuation and secure the next round of funding from VCs. That is what we are seeing as a driver. And all these companies are into e-commerce, into providing digital and physical services in the B2C world.
Yeah, one of our key points in our mission is to help people meet the partners that they need to avail themselves of the world's opportunities. And one of the really amazing untold stories is exactly how that works. Like, there's this whole constellation of service providers and folks that enable all of that. People credit, companies like, Amazon seems to be growing quite quickly. Walmart, when they expand, they go all out. And then you've got Uber, you've got Facebook, and, they just go wild across the world and expanding. But at the same time, they use partners like, employer of record, or a lot of the times they're able to partner with the right folks like yourself. So I don't know if any of those in particular are clients, but it's amazing the way that that globalization has been facilitated and enabled by the right choice of partners. So more on the case of adoption, though, I'm very interested in what you have to say also, because there's just so much opportunity out there. Right. And we were just talking about, we were talking outside, last mile, how to get things there, COD, how to deal with issues like this. What are you seeing in terms of these amazing, opportunities out there?
Well, let's see, at UPS, we invest over $1 billion in technology every year, right? So technology is very important. But I think why we're doing that, and I think why many retailers are doing that, is to create value. I think companies are not necessarily just investing in technology for the sake of it. I think they're doing it because they want to create and extract value. And in e-commerce, online shoppers, they are looking for a rewarding, personalized experience, both online and in a physical store. And if there's a new innovative technology that enables that and creates value that can be captured and monetized among the online shoppers, then I think that is technology that will be invested, right? So I think the nature about technology, I think, is do it for the sake of creating value.
So speaking of new technologies, one question that we get asked about all the time is blockchain and Bitcoin and other technologies like that. So tell me about, is this something that is yet to come to fruition? Is this something that, is ready to be deployed at scale? Is it something that is, you're testing out? What do you think of these technologies, and are they ready for prime time, really?
Yeah, Citi is taking a dual approach on both actually blockchain, right? One is, yes, the underlying technology architecture, blockchain is very, very interesting and provides an opportunity to bring an entire ecosystem together onto a common platform and share a common ledger. And that is where the efficiency of a blockchain can be realized. But what that actually needs is all the players in the ecosystem to make that additional investment, move their entire business processes to this new platform. If you take a simple trade, an export or an import transaction, a buyer and a seller, it is not just these two counterparties who can magically move on to blockchain and cut down the transaction life cycle from 30 days to 3 minutes, right? For that to happen, really, you need the customs authorities, the carrier, the shipping line, then maybe the freight forwarder, and I'm sure there are hundreds of other participants who also need to move their own business processes onto these common platforms, right? Is the industry and the entire ecosystem willing to make that additional investment, especially when they already have existing infrastructure that seems to be working fine? The opportunity is there, and that is where Citi continues to test this blockchain as a platform, and at the same time, we are cautious to the extent the amount to which we are willing to invest unless the entire ecosystem is willing to partner. So we are part of at least 3 groups, blockchain groups. One is R3, the second is with IBM, and the third is with MasterCard. So we are part of those blockchain ecosystems. In parallel, Citi also is building its own blockchain-driven solutions. For example, recently, and this is public information, we are the ones who are powering the entire settlement of a buy and a sell transaction on NASDAQ. NASDAQ has launched a blockchain platform for buying and selling shares, privately held shares, not the ones in the secondary market, but there's a closed user group, privately held share trading platform, and as soon as a buy and a sell transaction gets completed on blockchain. I think that provides that service very well. But at the end of that, somebody has to pay someone, right? How does that transaction happen? And that is where Citi plays a role. Similarly, we have another successful example with an insurance company who's, again, looking at blockchain, connecting that entire ecosystem to reduce their entire claims management process, right? From the time a pharmacy or a clinic raises a claim on the insurance provider, there's a whole lot of adjudication and validation that it needs to go through. And once that is completed, then there is a transaction that needs to happen from the insurance company to these providers. And that again is run on Citi's rails. So yes, blockchain is a technology that we are watching very closely. We continue to invest in specific solutions where we know that there is efficiency that Citi can add to and especially when there is an entire ecosystem which is participating in that blockchain.
I'm glad you're mentioning, there's actually got to be something to fulfill these things, right? We hear about like smart contracts. It's going to be an amazing future with smart contracts and things like that. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, all right, so who's going to fulfill that? You've got the same people doing the same thing. And maybe it's more efficient, maybe,
The original design was actually Bitcoin was that fulfillment currency, right? Using blockchain and Bitcoin as the currency which will power that settlement as soon as some work gets done on the blockchain. But given its opaqueness and the trust issues with Bitcoin as a currency, is that something banks like us would be willing to hold custody and settle and at the same time manage the volatility in its, in the Bitcoin pricing. And we are seeing a lot of these ICOs being launched, newer and newer currencies being, digital currencies, cryptocurrencies being launched, right? Till the time we have a government standing behind any of these currencies, I don't think the payment settlement itself will probably be difficult to be consummated on the blockchain, which is where banks like Citi can be that settlement engine when the business process happens on the blockchain.
Yeah, I always feel like the grump in Underground Man, Notes from Underground, where there's visions of the future and technology solving everything, and then you think, well, what about policy? What else could stand in the way and things like that. So I'm always trying to poke holes in it, but I know that there's amazing things going on in it, and it's no surprise that with a technology like that you're involved in the fulfillment. Tell me what UPS is doing with it. I hear again so much about the fulfillment. I hear about how records are kept and things like that. Is UPS? I'm sure the UPS is already just fine without any of that, but it might be doing things better. What's your approach to the technology?
Speaking of Bitcoin, I looked this morning on the value of Bitcoin. I don't know if any of you following that, but it's going through the roof, right?
My friends won't stop talking about it.
Since July, has it gone up like 100 times or something like that? I mean, it's unbelievable. So I wish I was a shareholder, but I'm not.
It's making me even grumpier.
Well, in terms of UPS, I mentioned we invest over $1 billion, and we're always trying to create value either internally or externally. I mean, internally, if we can have new technology that reduces, increases automation, reduces manual things that could save us cost, we will be all for that. Externally, to our customers, we're always trying to come up with innovative solution that we believe it's important for our customers and that creates value for them and that they are willing to pay for it. Because you gotta, at the end of the day, you gotta monetize what you invent, right? And you gotta extract some value for that. So we're always looking for new innovation. I think you mentioned drones. There's been a lot of thoughts about drones and for the future, and we are exploring, elaborating on that topic as well. I think Jean-Francois gave a fantastic example what we're doing in Rwanda where we're combining new innovation and technology with helping the common people
Yes.
in the country of Rwanda, right? So I think that's a fantastic example that Jean-François mentioned, that you don't only do technology for business, you can do it for sustainability, for the well-being of the society.
He was also mentioning how a lot of these technologies are going to be deployed in Expo 2020 with autonomous driving and some amazing deployments of technologies that right now are just sort of finding their footing and working their way through the policy process. But it makes me curious, tell me more about what's going on with Expo 2020. Clearly, Dubai is all ablaze about it. They're very excited. And it seems like a really exciting event and happening. So what's UPS doing with that? And what are some of the interesting challenges, some of the things that you're seeing that are just sort of fascinating moments?
Well, this is a really interesting topic, the Expo 2020 in Dubai. And if you take a step back, right? And the definition of an expo, it's about showcasing achievements of nations. Showcasing achievements of nations. And the first expo was in 1851, so over 150 years ago. And we've had over 100 expos around the world. But did you know this is the first expo in the geographical area of Middle East?
Did not know that.
So actually, Dubai is hosting the first World Expo in this geographical area. And that is something that we can be very proud of, right? And this is very important. By the way, I'm not speaking here on behalf of the Expo 2020. So if there's somebody out there representing Expo 2020, I'm just painting, a picture from a partner of you perspective. But the country of UAE is obviously is a big focus for them. They're going to invest $9 billion to make it a success. And obviously, when they awarded UPS to be the official logistics partner, we're very proud of that, right? Because we would like to help the UAE government and the Expo 2020 achieve their vision and their goals, and we're going to play our fair share of that. We are going to take care of all the logistics. And the Expo 2020 said that they were looking for somebody who can help them with moving stuff globally from around the world into Dubai. As a matter of fact, there are going to be 180 countries that's going to come to Dubai in 2020. And those 180 countries, they're going to showcase their achievements or what they are proud of. So it's the government of each one of those 180 countries going to do that. Plus, they're also going to have a few companies that represent that government or that country to showcase that. And they're all going to come to Dubai, and it's going to be 25 million visitors. Mm-hmm. So let's put that in perspective. If you take the FIFA World Cup in Brazil, you add up all the people that came there, and you take the latest Olympic and Paralympic Games in Brazil, and the latest the FIFA World Cup. You add up the people, it's less than 25 million. So that would tell you that this is a global mega event. 25 million people are going to come. And what I thought was interesting is that 70% of these 25 million are going to be from outside of UAE. 70% of the visitors are going to come from another country outside of UAE, right? So that would tell you that this is a very global event. And, from UPS, we are proud of being part of that, making a success of that. And, in terms of innovation and technology, who knows what's going to be displayed in 2020 or 2021. But if you look at the history of World Expos, I don't know if you know that, but the elevator was first introduced in a World Expo in Dublin.
I was just about to go into this. Like, people don't realize how important these expos are. Like, contributions in urban planning. I mean, there's so much of the world that we live in that was first displayed and popularized at expos. Right. It's an enormous moment.
Yeah. Probably the most iconic landmark, the Eiffel Tower in Paris, was launched at the World Expo in Paris 1889. And we've had many World Expos in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
The one in Chicago in the beginning of 1900s introduced the Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
And the one in New York in 1964 introduced the fax machine and video conferencing. So you have many examples that the hosting country of the World Expo is trying to come up with a new innovation that they like to display at the time of the Expo.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing the kind of inspiration that these events put out. I mean, a lot of what we know about Disneyland, for instance, also came from Walt Disney's experience with General Motors at one of the early expos. Well, it was in the early 60s, rather. But no, the impact that these events has is tremendous. So it must be very exciting.
Yeah, and one thing about some of the themes that the Expo 2020 has. There's 3 themes. The first one is about mobility. Actually, the first one is opportunity. It's about dreams and potential for the future, which they call opportunity. Then you have the mobility of that, the human resources to enable those dreams and future aspirations. And then you have sustainability, right? We want to make it a greener world, less waste. So sustainability is the third theme. And what I thought was interesting about the Expo 2020 is that they are saying that around 80% of everything that is being done for the Expo 2020 will remain after 2020. And they have named the area as District 2020. So, sometimes when you look back at some of the Olympic Games, you see pictures of Rio de Janeiro, Athens, Greece, Barcelona, and you see some of the venues, and you're thinking, wow, they're not using that at all. It was almost like a waste of money and no sustainability thinking. The vision here is that 80% of that is going to be sustainable and kept in this District 2020. And I think that by itself is a good legacy.
Most definitely. It's going to be really exciting. I know I'm going to be here for that. So going now back to some of the concepts that we were exploring a little bit earlier, one of the things that we'll be exploring a little bit later today is the massive program Aadhaar, the Indian Digitization Program and Identity Program, which of course, among other things has, made a big drive to deal with folks who previously not recorded, the unbanked, things like that, to improve the flow of government services down to individual people at every level. But it paints an interesting picture about what's going on with the unbanked, and it's something that I wanted to ask you about. I mean, what is the opportunity? What is the scale of the opportunity with the unbanked, and what are some I guess insights or trends that you're seeing from where you sit?
So what we have seen is going back to that Aadhaar example, right? They call it the jam trinity. That is what made it successful in India. J for Jan-Dhan, it's a name used for bank accounts, opening bank accounts for the unbanked. Then the KYC for each of those bank accounts was provided by this biometric authentication called Aadhaar. And then M stands for mobile smartphone usage. So an account whose KYC was integrated with Aadhaar, and transactions on that bank account was almost completely done using mobile phone. So that is the jam trinity. Over close to 1 billion Aadhaar biometric cards being issued, and with almost 100 million new bank accounts that got opened on the back of it, and close to about 500 million now growing people having access to mobile, right? And if you have this combination, and that is what leads to growth as well as all the sets the building blocks for e-commerce. Now, what is the opportunity there by bringing so many unbanked into the formal banking sector? It brings more liquidity into the entire banking community, plus giving them that access and the ability to transact online. You're essentially opening up a new window, almost the world, for them to go online and make that purchase. And that in itself drives and in a way reinvests back into the economy for that growth. We have seen this happen in multiple countries: China, India, M-Pesa in Kenya. So where you have unbanked, now you pretty much have all the infrastructure required to bring them back into the formal sector just by the sheer availability of digital connection and a smartphone. And if the governments play a role in enabling electronic KYC, then you pretty much have laid the entire infrastructure for the unbanked becoming banked. And that is an example that we consistently have seen. Pakistan, for example, in our cluster, the number of transactions that happen mobile to mobile without having any need for an underlying account. Very similar to what has happened in M-Pesa in Africa. Luckily, within the GCC, that part of unbanked is not as high. A few years back, central banks came up with this policy of issuing a prepaid card, which is linked to an underlying bank account. So all the unbanked immediately got access to the banking system. Plus, also the central bank policy was to ensure that payroll is mandatorily paid through the banking system. What used to be a cash every week or once a month as payroll, now it is going through the banking system. So you pretty much moved all the unbanked onto the formal banking engine.
So it sounds like a lot of these technologies are improving. I think that's one of the reasons why so many countries are interested in what's been going on with Aadhaar, and so many NGOs, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, everybody seems to be going and checking it out. So I hope that keeps going, because getting those unbanked into the formal sector, I think, is going to be really key to a lot of access to opportunity. So, when we were all discussing in the early days of creating this program, one of the things that I noticed about Citi is the degree to which it wants to partner with companies as they grow and innovate. Mentioned a lot of things, a lot of examples, and I know that you've got an innovation center and probably quite a few labs around the world that you work with other companies on. How does that work? And what are some of the cool things that have come out of that? What do you see that's really exciting right now that could be real game changers?
Yeah, co-creation is the philosophy on which Citi has built its innovation infrastructure, and to that effect, we have these innovation labs for Treasury and Trade Solutions. The unit that I belong to, we have 2 innovation labs, one in Dublin, and the other one is in Singapore to cover the Asia Pacific, right? And what we do there is actually we invite partners and clients to come into these labs, and there are 2 or 3 themes that we request them to talk to us on in terms of problems or pain points, right? One theme is how do we enable their growth, right? How can we help those clients or companies become more successful? That is one area. The second area is around simplification, their interaction with various service providers, including banks like Citi, how that experience could be simplified using the new technology that is emerging. And the third one is around data and artificial intelligence, blockchain, the new emerging technologies. To that effect, we have conducted almost 400 plus workshops with other companies in these innovation labs. These are like one full day, 2 full day kind of workshops where we identify 3 or 4 broad areas where both city and the client can continue working on over the next 6, 9, 12 months and come up with appropriate solutions. And internally within city also we have started, we have created internal startups, or what we call as Discover 10X. What we have seen is we are 200,000 plus employee company, right? And a lot of them have bright ideas. And today, the opportunity for them to explore those ideas is by going external and finding their own VC and building on that idea and acquiring customers and so on and so forth. City has created an ecosystem where people with such bright ideas can come and present to an internal growth board, almost like a venture capital team, and present those ideas. And if that growth board likes the idea, they will fund that idea. And then you can create your own internal startup team to build and work and test and experiment on those ideas. The benefit is you have access to city's clients, you have access to city's infrastructure, and you have access to city's functional partners. A lot of times, beyond the idea, execution becomes more important. And as you get towards the execution phase, there are a lot of legal, compliance, and technology-related challenges. And city already has all that infrastructure to support these internal startup teams to build and experiment on those ideas. So far we have about 40 such internal startups, 40 people with different ideas, small teams working on various ideas. About 8 or 10 of them have failed. So we have said, okay, come up with a new idea. And there are another 30 or 40, 30 odd ideas which are at various stages of testing. Seed 1, Seed 2, and the launch phase. A couple of the ideas have actually gone into the launch phase. One is very close to data and cyber. As soon as our customer sends in a payment file, we have built an artificial intelligence layer which reads the details in that file and automatically alerts our customer saying, okay, this payment file does not seem normal, or this payment instruction is an outlier. It's not your usual transaction that we have seen over the last 6, 9, 12, 24 months, right? Do you want to do another review and execute that payment again? So that artificial intelligence layer captures any of those outliers and replays it back to our customers. And we have about 30 or 40 prospect clients who want to implement this, because that is another layer of protection for them for a fraudulent transaction being initiated either from within their organization or from a third party using their bank account.
Listen, as a company that has been, just stepping outside the United States, if you guys get that down, that's a robot that I can definitely relate to and feel emotionally invested in. It's been tough to do to get that balance right. So I really hope to see that come to fruition, because there's that balance between security and getting a fluid transaction going and so on. On that, I'm curious about, there's so much that's been happening in the last 2 years about security, hacking, artificial intelligence, and how to track that stuff. What's going on in that space? What's the best scenarios that we're seeing right now?
I can talk about a couple of examples without taking names. And the moment we say security, cyber threat, etc., we think there are these geeks or sitting somewhere in Eastern Europe or wherever, right? And they have these sophisticated tools which can hack into company infrastructure and create the ransomwares that we have seen in public domain, or create fraudulent transactions and getting themselves paid or getting someone else paid, right? This is what we immediately comes to mind. But recent examples that we have seen are actually very, very simple. There's no use of technology. Actually, there's a lot of social engineering driven cyber fraud that seems to be prevalent more than any sophisticated tool or technology which is creating these cyber threat. It is a simple example of a supplier sending an email to their customer saying, oh, I have changed my bank, here is my new account number. Here onwards, you pay into this new account, right? It's a simple email, that is all. Now, how and what process that customer has upon receiving such an email, right? Is there a callback? Is there a double check? Is there a triple check? If there is no such process, they will automatically go and update their supplier master with the new account number, right? And when the next transaction happens, it goes to a different beneficiary and the original supplier does not get paid. So it's a very, very, I mean, we all know how easy it is to perform an email phishing, right? You can almost send emails in the name of any company without owning that domain. That is where a lot of effort is going in towards education. We have done 100+ seminars with our clients around the Middle East itself over the last 12, 18 months, educating about social engineering, plus the need for having adequate prevention, detection, and recovery processes defined, more than just your investing in technology and securing your endpoints.
Yeah, it's been a wild couple of years. We've been seeing all kinds of technologies deployed. Some of it's been amazing. SpaceX is doing cool stuff. We've got artificial intelligence breaking down new barriers, and then all of a sudden you think about, gosh, what else do we see? And it's like Russian trolls arguing with American, people sitting at home watching politics roll by. So it's a mixed bag out there right now, but it's nice to know that folks are educating and protecting. So anyway, that wraps up our session, and I wanted to thank you both so much for being here and collaborating with us. You're both really exciting companies, and it's just a thrill to be here with you. So thanks a bunch.